Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Hello and welcome to another episode of Living the Dream with Curveball. I'm your host, Curveball, and today I am joined by Jennifer Cunningham. She is going to talk about public bullying, cyberbullying, cancel culture, and workplace humiliation. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Can you start off by just giving everybody a little bit of background about yourself, maybe where you're from and anything else you might want people to know before we kick it off?
Sure. So I'm coming to you from California, and I'm a California native. And I've worked as a coach and a counselor for over 20 years, mostly with helping people with their careers and relationships. And for the last year or so, I've kind of focused on helping people recover confidence after crisis. More and more, we're seeing people, especially, in this virtual online world, we're seeing a lot of people really get their reputations destroyed from things that are maybe false accusations, as well as things that are kind of out of their hands to control. So I had a situation in which that happened to me. And it prompted me to kind of want to move in this direction. And there's, I'm finding there's more and more people out there that are really suffering some damage. So that's kind of what propelled me to go into this area.
So let's talk about that situation that prompted you to get started in this field. Tell us about the situation and how you handled it.
Yeah, I work at a university, and I've been working in higher education and at a couple different places for, over 20 years. That's the bulk of my career. And in the particular situation that I was in, I'm in a very challenging role where I have to make, decisions which can impact the students in a variety of ways, some of which can be pretty devastating. Sometimes students get expelled and maybe they aren't allowed to continue with their education. And, what happened was even before I was making the decision, I was just in the beginning stages of looking into an incident. And I think some people thought that I was going to make a decision that wouldn't benefit them. And they came after me in kind of a really public way. They plastered the entire campus with my name and asked that I, be fired, and called me incompetent and accused me of saying some very ridiculous things that I would never say. That was really hard to take because at the time I had really been kind of a beloved person on campus and had lots of just outstanding relationships with the students and had a really good reputation among my peers. And the situation really, affected me. I had always kind of, liked to have a glass of wine at after work, but I was drinking more and more. And my husband was getting a little sick of hearing, he was very supportive, but even he was tiring of hearing, how this was affecting me. And I couldn't sleep and my blood pressure went up. So I really, I started feeling some pretty effects of this situation. And all I really wanted to do was move into another job. I wanted to, quit and move to something else. And I tried, but I was so kind of damaged and hurt emotionally at that time that I really wasn't putting off the right vibes for anybody to hire me. And luckily for me, the administration of the university investigated the accusations that were made against me, and they determined that I was, I had followed the procedure and did what I was supposed to have done. So in that way, I was supported But even with that kind of support, it was just really, it was really hurtful experience to me. And so that's kind of what, what prompted this whole thing. And then the more I researched and read and kind of investigated about defamation and slander and those kind of things, I realized that, wow, there's a lot of people that have had way more severe experiences than that I have. Maybe more damaging, but I think, when I compare what I went through to a lot of the stories that I've heard since then, I feel so fortunate to have kind of come out of the situation, in a way, a better person for having gone through it.
So how were you able to bounce back and rebuild your reputation, or were you able to rebuild your reputation after all this had happened?
Yeah. So, I started reading a lot about people who had, their reputations destroyed, sometimes by, a decision that they made that was wrong, or sometimes just from being an innocent victim. And I started researching and kind of, just discovering, and, I looked into, suing the people who, instigated this. And it was a group of students, but I believe that they were backed by some faculty who thought that they knew how to do my job, and they didn't really understand the ins and outs of what I was supposed to be doing. But their intentions may have been good in terms of wanting to support students, but they really didn't know the rules and what I was being charged to do. So started reading, and I did all the normal things that people do to try to kind of get through a situation. I meditated, and I tried to slowly build my health back in terms of exercising more and doing those textbook things that everybody says to do to heal through experiences. But really, what I think allowed me to recover the best was when I decided I am not going to let this situation define me. And there's a man who did this documentary. His name is Bryanson, and he made this documentary film, interestingly enough, about mass incarceration, particularly of African American people. He, these were often wrongly accused people that were spending years behind bars. And he did this documentary about them called Just Mercy. And I use his quote all the time because his quote is, "We're not the worst things that we've ever done." And then I kind of add on to that my own piece, "And we're not the worst thing that's ever happened to us." So when I, started getting my confidence back, I decided I'm not going to let the situation define me. And there's kind of a psychological term called post-traumatic growth. And that's where, you take a situation you were in that maybe was very damaging and hurtful, and, often can really destroy people if they let it. And you take that situation and you grow through it. So essentially, that's kind of what I did. I put my efforts into creating this business with the idea in mind that I wanted to help people, and that helped me heal. And then kind of what's even helped more is listening to people's stories about their own situations and offering them help. Often that's just someone to listen to them outside of their immediate circle. Maybe their friends and their family are just growing weary, and they don't want to hear about it anymore. They just want their loved one, their spouse, their friend, their daughter, their sister, their brother, whatever. They just want that person back. They just want that fun person that they were before the incident. They just want that person back. And often they're tired of hearing the person ruminate about their experience. And that's where, I can be helpful too, and just kind of being that objective voice. And through hearing about other people's experiences, that allowed me to kind of take a step back and say, wow, I'm, even though what I went through was tough, it's really, it could have been so much worse, or there's so many people that have had, worse experiences than I have had. So I think that answered your last question.
Well, this next question is twofold, and it did answer my question. The first part of the question is, are you still working at the university, or are you just focusing full time on your business? And the second part is, tell us about your business
Mhm.
that you're using now to help people.
Yeah, I am still working at the university, and that incident was back in 2018, so it's been a couple years, and I am there, and it's been fine since, and I've regained my confidence, and am no longer really looking for alternative work, and the business I do part time. Ideally, I would like to build this business to where, as I approach maybe retirement age, that I could, have some income coming in from doing this part time. And if it takes off, and my challenge is marketing, right? Because I know that there's people out there like me that are experiencing this kind of trauma, but they're not exactly shouting from the rooftops that they've been, slandered or defamed. And so finding them, and, they may be a little hidden, has been kind of my marketing challenge. But, I would love nothing more than to be doing this full time and have this replace my full time income. Not quite there yet. And that's okay, because moving slowly is, is helping me kind of frame what it could look like, moving forward. So I'm okay where I'm at, and I thank you for asking that question.
Well, tell us about the projects that your company is working on at the time and any upcoming projects that you guys have coming up.
Yeah. So in my effort to get exposure, I talk on lots of podcasts, and when things are back to normal, when COVID is over, I hope to be on, different platforms and, stages, and be able to speak about this to audiences. I have a small Facebook group, and, if you're interested in joining my Facebook group, it's Confidence After Crisis, Revive Your Badass Self. And that's kind of just a support group for people that may be just looking for, some other people who can identify with what they've experienced. And I am on LinkedIn, and do some other, I do some other kind of marketing. I'm developing a webinar and maybe a short course where people can learn about this themselves. And then, of course, people can work with me one-on-one. So my one-on-one package is usually, I really think that anything less than 6 sessions really doesn't provide enough time to get to the heart of the matter. So I have kind of a 6-session program that walks people through some different phases, along with some activities from positive psychology and solution-focused brief therapy that I use with my clients to kind of reconnect them with all of their achievements, and get them back to themselves, or I like to say better than before. And I really like this concept about post-traumatic growth. If people can get there, and it takes a while sometimes to see how a bad situation, or a humiliating situation, or a situation that people have been hurt from, how they can recover and move forward. But we see it all the time. It's just it's those success stories, right, where you hear people have just had these horrible things happen to them, false accusation, or, like I mentioned, being imprisoned without a due process, or unjustly. And we're seeing that so much more now. Thankfully, there's more awareness of that type of thing. But you see these people that have had these, like 20 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit, right? And I mean, I'm talking about something so minor compared to that. But I think we're seeing there's those people that walk out of those situations with resilience, they have gone through these horrible experiences, but yet they're able to move beyond them. And that's where I get a lot of my inspiration, is from people like that, because I just think, wow, if somebody can walk out of that situation with their head held high and ready to move on, with the rest of their life, what they can make of it. All of us can do that. So again, I think I kind of rambled off your the question that you asked me, but those are the kind of things that I research and I look into, and I try to connect with people that are doing similar work. And I've become kind of involved in this workplace bullying community. And that really wasn't how I described what happened to me, but in researching what happens to a lot of people in the workplace and being bullied in the workplace. And, we use that word bullying, and we kind of, sometimes we think of like little kids on the playground, but it's a real thing that happens in a lot of workplaces. And what I realized is that, that may not have been my exact experience, but a lot of the ramifications, or a lot of the ways I was impacted, were very similar to those that are in workplace bullying situations. And, in the US, we really don't have laws around workplace bullying. We have lots of laws around harassment and discrimination and that type of thing, but it's really hard to prove bullying. And, but it happens a lot. So, it's been really inspiring for me to be connected with that group of people. But I like to talk to people that are working in similar areas, whistleblowing, at workplaces and so forth. So just trying to connect with people and get my, share what I have to offer, and hopefully people, that need help can find me.
What do you feel about this new thing called cancel culture? That's
Yeah,
become really relevant these days.
it's a double-edged sword, I think, because depending on what side you are of a particular issue, you can be seen as, if you're saying what you want to say, but one half of that group doesn't like what you say and then automatically, cut you off. Are we really getting anywhere? Are we having any dialogue? But then by the same token, if you're saying things that are so outrageous or, fake news or whatever you want to call it, those types of ideas shouldn't be perpetuated. So what I come back to is how that person who has been canceled, how they feel. So if I talk to somebody and that's their experience, I try to I don't focus on what the issue was, what they, I hear their story and they tell me their story, but I don't focus on the right or wrong of the side that they took. What I try to focus on is helping that person work through their situation and come out okay afterwards. But it's in a time where we need dialogue more than anything. It's a very tricky thing. And, I personally, I don't know where to be with that, because I hate that people can share these outrageous claims about things like, the whole QAnon thing is really strange to me. But I also think, okay, none of us have all day to research news items. If we hear something on the news, I know I don't have time to, spend my day trying to dig for the original source of that information and, decide whether it's true or not. I try to do a little bit of, fishing around when I hear something to see the likelihood that it's true, but we can't do that. I mean, usually you just have to pick 3 or 4 sources that you trust and go with what they say, because that's their job, is to dig around and look for the truth. So I think it's a very, very tricky situation. I just wish people would, I mean, my hope for the world, if that's not too big, is that, we can just really talk and listen to each other, but it's challenging.
It definitely is. Tell us about your website, and have you ever thought about writing a book or doing your own podcast?
Oh, yeah, that's great. So no, book writing probably isn't my thing. I write some blog articles, but the idea of a book sounds too overwhelming. I don't think I would ever get it done. I might be able to write like a little pamphlet or some small bites of information. I tossed it around the idea of doing a podcast, and I think if somebody wanted to run with this, I think it would be so interesting. But a podcast where people come on and actually share these types of horror stories, and and people can listen to the other person's situation or what they experience. I think that would be fascinating. I'm not inclined to start that, but who knows, maybe if I could get something like that going, I think it would be a really interesting story. I tell the story in a lot of my workshops, or when I present about Monica Lewinsky. And if you're too young, you may not know, but Monica Lewinsky was a woman who had an affair with the then president of the United States, Bill Clinton. She was really kind of patient zero in terms of her reputation being destroyed very quickly over social media, because she was this young person, this woman that was half the age of the president, and overnight she became known as a slut and a homewrecker. And she was just this little kid. I mean, she was a child. She was I think 19 or 20 years old, and yet, I mean, I can't even imagine being her at that age and having her whole, life turned upside down in a major, major way. Yet she came through it. And she actually now has, I think, I think she's done some fashion work in fashion. And she also is an advocate for online bullying and this type of thing. And I admire her so much, and just what she overcame. But those are the kind of stories, and I could go on and on. I could tell you, a million stories of things that I've heard that have happened to people. They're just, I find them fascinating, and one hand so sad, because a lot of times these people are just like totally innocent, and just somebody didn't like them and decided to destroy their lives. It's really a shame. And then, the last thing I think you asked me, Curtis, was where could people find me, or my website. So reputationrepaircoach.com is my website. And I would love to, if you're experiencing this type of thing, or, someone that needs help and support, there's nothing that I find more rewarding than doing this kind of work.
Maybe you could start a blog, the Reputation Repair blog. That would be something
yeah.
cool.
There's lots of things I could be doing.
Absolutely.
But I like that you're suggesting them, because it makes me think, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I should look into that. So thank you, Curtis.
No problem. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out for the audience?
Yeah, I would just, leave your audience with the idea that, I go back to that quote, we're not the worst things we've ever done or the worst thing that's ever happened to us. So now is always a time to, make yourself better and recover if you need to. If there's anybody out there that's hurting really bad, because sometimes these situations can really drive people over the edge, and they take their own lives. So I appreciate so much you giving me this time on the web, on your podcast, and talking about such an important issue. And I just, I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer, the reputation repair coach, Cunningham. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Curtis. Thank you.
And listeners, please be sure to follow, rate, review, and share after listening. For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.